So with Serie A still a little bit of ways away from restarting after the new year, it's kind of strange to see such a influx of news and information today from around the Italian football realm. Big stories today, I think, are particularly coming from Chelsea and Roma, as well as Juventus. But I'm going to dive in first and foremost to Daniele De Rossi. It's reported that he's agreed to verbal terms regarding a 2-year extension to remain at Roma well into his mid-30s. That's a bit of a surprise. I think a year ago, or maybe, frankly, 4 months ago, after the game against Porto, I'm sure there was more than a majority of Roma fans calling for him to be done with Roma altogether. But the Giallorossi are very, very hesitant at getting rid of their legends. And I think you could throw De Rossi into that realm of legendary players for Roma, along with Francesco Totti in their own rights. But I'm pretty satisfied with the fact that Roma is going to stay the course of their midfield. I think they have probably arguably not the best midfield in Serie A. I think it's well balanced. I think Spalletti's beginning to work wonders with De Rossi. And perhaps we could see an Andrea Pirlo-esque development track and maybe even see a bit of a renaissance with him. It's not as likely, but another 2 years at Rome or at Roma is going to be quite a confidence boost, you'd have to imagine. Now, there's another story I'm going to quickly spring over to, and that's Chelsea going in on Riccardo Orsolini, and it looks like AC Milan are beginning to back out of the race for him. The Chinese ownership, which is coming in, has reportedly vetoed any move for him, which is quite surprising, and I think that report may lack a little bit of credibility, in all due respect. It's the reason why I'm just dumbfounded as to why they would cancel or veto a move for one of the more highly rated prospects in Italian football at the moment is that the Chinese investment group is willing to spend almost $1 billion on AC Milan. Remember, this is a club that doesn't even own its own stadium, but the valuation is that high. The valuation for AC Milan is an incredibly high figure. But they're going to reject a $4.5 million approach for one of the more highly rated wingers in Italian football coming to the pipeline. I'm sorry. That doesn't make much sense to me. What does make sense to me on the Orsolini front is seeing Antonio Conte begin to put in more of an aggressive approach to attempt to sign him. Look, Riccardo Orsolini, for everything that we know, we pulled the profile on him last night. He's a young, talented winger. This is a very different class of Italians coming through. The ones born in 1996, 1997, the 19, 20-year-olds are a much different breed than the ones who came through in the 1991, 1992 era. These are much more talented players all across the board. The U21 national side for Italy is much stronger now than it was 6 years ago. That's indisputable. So with that in mind, let's take a look at Orsolini more in depth. Now, he plays in Serie B. That's not, a knock on him. He's playing for Ascoli Piceno. I just butchered that name, I believe. Ascoli Piceno. No, I didn't. No, yes, I did. Yes. Ascoli Picchio. I don't know why I thought it was Piceno. But anyways, I digress. So we have a bunch of young players at this side. I mean, it's just loaded, to be frank. You have multiple teenagers who are getting playing time. That's great. But they play a 4-2-3-1 system. That's okay. What does that mean? Well, Orsolini's a right winger, a right midfielder. And that's really, this formation fits perfectly for a player like him. Another thing, too, is that he's racked up an equal amount of assists as he has to goals. He has 4 goals and 4 assists. He's very active on the offensive front. That's a big plus. For somebody as young as him, who's 19 years old, will be turning 20 in about less than a month. So keep that in mind, too. He's almost 20. He's almost out of the teenage phase. But that tells me that he's further along in his development than some people may believe. He's made a few appearances for the Italy U20 side. Not many big players, I think, right now on the U20 side, although there is Federico Chiesa. But where I think Antonio Conte is seeing so much potential, and why a lot of big teams around Europe are seeing potential, is that there's a common connection. His agent is the same guy, Donato Di Campli, as Marco Verratti. He's the same guy, the same agent. So obviously the agent sees something, right? I mean, Di Campli has taken numerous players from Serie B to Serie A. So Orsolini is right there up with them. I think that's if Ascoli was in a different position and they were like Pescara was when Verratti was coming through, I think people would have caught on to him long ago. But I'm telling you, Orsolini is a major, major prospect. And he's going to be, if he gets out of Serie B, if he moves in January, which at this point I give him a 95% chance that he leaves in January, he could burst onto the scene a lot quicker than many people suspect. I just get a feeling about it. And I've watched films. He's a very physical winger, very big guy. And this all points towards the next Verratti, maybe the next Verratti kind of player who goes from Serie B to a continental giant. That's what that screams out to me. So there's other stuff going on today as well. Thomas Rincon, who I spoke about yesterday at length, passed his medical examination with Juventus today. Looks like he'll be available against Bologna, and I believe that game is on January 4th. January 4th or 5th? No, I am mistaken. That's the 7th. So next weekend, Thomas Rincon should be available to his side. That's interesting, but also now I'm going to shift over to Genoa's side. You know, they're getting gutted. They are getting absolutely gutted in January. There's talk about Mattia Perin leaving. Leonardo Pavoletti's gone. Rincon is gone. Lassalt's agents say he's not leaving in January, but if the right offer comes along and look, another guy who's fallen way under the radar, an ex-Inter player, Diego Lassalt is one of the strongest midfield. He's a dynamo. It's exactly what some teams in Serie A need and they want. I would say there's a chance that he leaves Genoa too. So all this in mind, Genoa's getting absolutely gutted in January. Who all leaves and who? And this isn't a club who's going to be buying, decent replacement players. No, that market will open up in July and in August. My feeling is that they're going to be one of the worst sides, points-wise at least, in 2017, the beginning part of the season, or the beginning part of the year, excuse me. I think that Genoa's in deep trouble. But the thing is, they're going to cash in by July when all the redemption clauses come. When payday comes for them, they're probably going to be making upwards of like 30 or 40 million euro, which is not bad. That's a good sum to rebuild. But losing Pavoletti may be masked in the end by Giovanni Simeone, his meteoric rise. So while Genoa's losing power in the midfield, there's another guy coming up in the forward role, and that's Simeone. And there's a lot of talk and a lot of rumble around that Simeone may be waiting for his father, Diego, who's the coach at Atletico Madrid, to eventually take over Inter Milan. Now we're talking 2 to 3 years out in the future, but that's what he could be getting groomed for. The next Diego Milito? I don't know. But Simeone is going to be giving now almost free reign at Genoa as the undisputed starting striker with Pavoletti departing. So that's where we are with that. Another interesting thing revolving around Genoa and Juve is now Hernanes could finally be leaving and heading in the opposite direction. Now, that's interesting to me because I feel like Hernanes should have been gone in August. He should have been at Genoa in August. But the Axel Witsel move from Zenit St. Petersburg to Juventus collapse. We all know the story. That doesn't seem to be the case this time, especially now with Quadro Asamoah pulling out of the African Cup of Nations, meaning that Asamoah will be staying and the only player leaving is Mario Lemina. So now this seems like, okay, yeah, we have the extra player in the midfield now. We have extra 2 players, actually. So now, yeah, I think Hernanes could get his move. Genoa would not be paying the entire salary, which I'm sure is going to upset, quite a lot Juventus supporters. He's got a big salary, about $1.2 million a year net. So there's that. Hernanes is I think he's a strong player for a side like Genoa. That may help Juric out and stave off a tremendous collapse, but I'm not too sure. Losing a lot of muscle in the Genoa midfield, that's never a good thing, especially in a physical league like Serie A. Switching gears, we're heading back to the Premier League now, and it's revolving around Claudio Ranieri's Leicester. Francesco Acerbi, it looks like he will be again on the move in January. Ranieri's pretty serious. Not a new rumor at all about him potentially going to the Premier League. But Acerbi has bounced back from the brink. He overcame cancer. And that's always a really big thing, obviously. I mean, that goes without saying. But he's really became one of the stronger defenders in Serie A. Gotten a few national team call-ups as well, which, like I've mentioned in past episodes of IFD Radio, whenever another defender outside of the Juventus block, or I guess Alessio Romagnoli, gets a call-up and gets playing time, it's a pretty big deal. So I think Acerbi, if he goes to the Premier League, it would be very interesting to say the least, because there's not really a good situation right now at Leicester. The club's fighting for survival, which that's just so weird to say when you follow up the fact that they're the Premier League champions. But Leicester's preparing to offer Sassuolo €10 million. Sassuolo may want closer to, I've read 12 to 15 million. And I think for a 28-year-old defender in his prime, that's a fair price. It just depends how much Ranieri wants him. I mean, that's just, the truth. Now, Sassuolo won't sell until they get a replacement. That's the bottom line. They're not going to sell. Sassuolo has been ravaged by injuries this year to the point where it's almost laughable. They just yesterday, I believe they agreed to terms with Alberto Aquilani as a stopgap solution, but the team is shot with injuries. I think if Sassuolo was healthy and Berardi hadn't gotten hurt at the beginning of the season, because remember, Berardi was just in absolute tremendous form, I think that would have been a game changer. But the team is struggling. I can see them offloading a few players in January and going for younger, more long-term solutions, and also at the same time making some money in January. The final piece of news I'm going to get to in our segment today, actually there's two more, I apologize. The very surprising twists and turns of the Zaza deal seems to be more or less coming to its conclusion. And here's and this is according to multiple sources in Italy and Spain, this is the bottom line. Juventus do not want a repeat of what happened at West Ham. Simone Zaza is not in the plans of Juventus. He's just not. There's no need, according to Allegri, for Simone Zaza. Okay, so Juventus still wants to make a nice penny on him. He's an Italy international. He's got a good side of goal. He comes with his flaws. They're asking for 20 million euro loan to buy with an obligation after one appearance. No more 15 like at West Ham. They want to make sure that he is transferred for good at least by June. Valencia is not too happy about that. But again, remember, the coach at Valencia is Cesare Prandelli, and he's got ideas of his own. So Cesare Prandelli wants to bring in someone that's Zaza, that's fine. Valencia are a little bit hesitant on, number one, the clause. After one appearance, you got to buy him. Number two, they're a bit hesitant on the price tag, but there's not going to be much negotiation because Juventus does not want to take a loss on Simone Zaza. I believe they spent 18 million on him at the beginning of last year. The beginning of last season. Year and season are beginning to blend together because we're coming to the end of the calendar year, but we're still mid-season of the 2016-2017 campaigns. The last bit of news today, which to me is stunning, is the growth rate of some of the Serie A fan bases. And this is actually, it's almost funny because attendance has fallen almost 2% this year alone. Again, I think it's the 6th or 7th year of decline in attendance. But there's still some growing fan bases in Italy. So number one, Juventus reigns supreme. And it's not even close. Juventus is, according to the Ipsos poll and Stage Up polls, in which they surveyed those between the ages of 14 and 65, which, by the way, it's a bit strange. They stopped at 65 years old because Italy has a very high over 65 population. But I digress. Juventus, according to the polls, has close to 8.4 million fans, roughly double of that what the second-place team, AC Milan, has. And I'm going to include this statistic is based only on fans in Italy. The fastest-growing fan base in Italy is from Napoli. De Laurentiis' side, over the past 5 years, his fan base has grown 61% among that demographic. Followed by others like Bologna, who's up 58%. The new ownership probably has a lot to do with that. And getting promoted back into Serie A. Also, Lazio is up almost 46%, which again, these numbers are a bit iffy to me because Lazio's attendance has been so low. But if the fan base is up, I guess that's hard to. There's not direct correlations. It's not mutually exclusive. But the Napoli fans, it doesn't surprise me that they're up so sharply. It's probably actually being suppressed by the fact that 40% of Juventus' support comes from the southern regions of Italy, including Clegna. That's incredible. It makes that a little less surprising. The least amount of their support comes from the northwestern region of Italy. Can you believe that? So the northwestern region of Italy, the Piemonte region, is the least supported. It's the least supporter of Juventus. While in Napoli's backyard, in the southern region of Italy, where there's no other giant down there, Juventus supporters come out in the droves. Now, I think Napoli will continue to grow. I think a whole generation of Italian football supporters. I think that the reason why a whole generation just did not come out for Napoli was in the mid-2000s when they were in Serie C, although they did boast very high attendances then, but it wasn't a marketable team. Napoli's growing now because they've won a few Coppa Italias, a Supercoppa. They're qualifying for the Champions League. Their style of play is strong. I think that's why Napoli's improving so much. But Napoli's, they got a great owner. Aurelio De Laurentiis, as controversial as he is, has built Napoli into a continental giant. That's not too far-fetched of a claim. Entertaining sides to watch. After all, they scored the most goals in the first half of the Serie A campaign, ousting Juventus off that title. So when you put it all together, Napoli's style of play, their resurgence the last 5 years, and particularly, the last 5 years, they've came a long way. And I'm fairly certain that we're going to continue to see excellent numbers of growth from Napoli the next 5 years. Fastest growing team in Italy comes from the south. Well, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed today's edition of IFD Radio, and I hope you continue to check out our content, and a big thank you to all of our readers and listeners. Thanks. Buona giornata.